Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. Definitely, this episode will cover the events of last week. Actually, I call it the week of turbulence. It was a week full of a lot of turbulence. Created by the increase in the street looting and vandalism, or what we call it poverty crimes, and then by the blocking the lifeline of the country from Port Sudan to Khartoum by the Eastern Bija leader, and it culminated on the 21st of September by the failed attempted coup, as announced by the Council of Ministers. So we'll try to cover in depth the events, especially the failed coup, and then we go down the episode till we reach the conclusion of the reasons and remedies for this harbingers. Actually, these are very bad harbingers, messages, wrong, negative messages, leading to maybe to anarchy, to collapse of the country. Anyhow, I'm happy to host two of our friends here who are very much concerned about the situation, well known to you. First, we have our friend Professor Manzoul, Abdullah Manzoul. He's a professor in the University of Khartoum, and he is very active and activist, and even he has some connections with international institutions as expert, or they resort to him in many different issues. And he's also very active in the peace processes. And he was actually the ex-director of the Peace Institute in the University of Khartoum, and now he is the dean of scientific research. Now the dean of the Faculty of Scientific Research of the University of Khartoum. Also we have our friend Dr. Sammani Hanoun, or Associate Professor Sammani Hanoun. He is also very active in the revolution. He is one of the very active, and he played very important roles and still playing a good role in the following up what's happening in the revolution and its precarious path. Now it's passing by very dangerous path, and is also in the University of Ahfad. Welcome both of you to this episode of Dialogue Horizon. Professor Manzour, we'll start by the first issue that I called the last week. I call it a very special week. It's a week of uncertainty. It's a week of turbulence. All these are signs, bad signs, not good signs for the coming future. So as I said in the introduction to the episode, that varies the increase of the poverty crimes in the different parts of the national capital and even different towns in the country. What we call the looting of innocent people in different places, and some kind of vandalism. Then what is happening in the east, and you have very good connection with the peace process of the whole country of Sudan. You were right in the middle of this process before it started, and you were supposed to be in a leading post in this peace process in the country after the revolution. So you can tell us about, first we'll talk about the failed coup, then we'll come down to the peace process and what you can see or foresee for the East if things continue like this. But first, let us tell us about the attempted coup.
Well, thank you, Omar. I'm happy to be here with our friend Sammani. Yes, I agree with you that the last week was a very serious week for the country, and what happened was quite grave. And if I may start with what you termed as poverty crimes, This is an alarming development. Although I might not look at it as being portrayed in a very dramatic way in the media and the social media in particular, because some people would argue that some of these things that are recorded in the social media might not actually be true, and perhaps some of these incidents were orchestrated and recorded to show that there is crime, to show that the state is failing to provide security, and all of that. Of course, this is not saying that such crimes
It's not a
don't
true
exist.
picture. It's not the true picture.
Exactly, that's my point.
Amplified or
Precisely. There are some people who might be amplifying these events to show that there is lack of security and all of that. And then, of course, the blockage of the lifeline of the country, the port. We will, of course, talk about it in detail. But that is also one of the serious developments, and something that sends bad signals, bad messages to the international community, and also something that is quite threatening to the whole country. And finally, the attempted coup, whether it was fake or whether it was real, is another serious development that is negatively going to affect the transition. We are still waiting to know the details about it, but in all cases, whether it is true or false, whether it's fake or real, this is something that's quite serious.
So this is okay. This is good. So Professor Mazur says that some of the crime, I agree with him, in the media are magnified. In many cases, and the police reports, when announced, they undermine, and some people, they are going back to videos and very old videos and very old pictures. I agree with him. It's not that much, but the East, turmoil in the East, this is another issue. We'll come and talk to about it, because it's a very serious issue. About the attempted coup, Prime Minister Dr. Hamdouk was unhappy, and he said that those who led the people who led the revolution and the big change, they will not accept any military regime. But the reaction of the people in the streets, and you are one of the leaders of the streets, the reaction is not as expected. People did not take to the street denouncing the attempted coup. They did not react with it. What is the reason for this? Is it that because they don't believe that there is a coup, or why? Can you tell us about this?
Thanks to Sudan TV and especially to Dialogue Horizon, and I'm happy to join this special episode with my friend Professor Al-Manzoor. And I hope that to contribute and to add some value to the discussion of this special hot issue. We can describe the week of the breach news, the week of frustrating news, the week of disappointing news, because we receive some negative news from different sources. One of this news from the East Sudan, from the lifeline that blocked by Bija and especially by the Nasir Tirik and his supporters, who deeply influence the inflow of export and import to the country, and that very sensitive to the economic positions of Sudan, that is very fragile economic position in the country. And one thing more, the military coup, the failed military coup or attempt during the September 21st. Actually, this sent very negative message to the revolution makers everywhere in Sudan, and it is very disappointing to the Sudanese peoples who performed the ever peaceful revolutions in the world during the December revolution. Now people are looking very upset to this very disappointing news. And even the world positively interacted with this very negative news from the security forces, and also will bring the security forces to the front. And again, when we talk about the risk that encounter the transitional period, now we can exclusively talk about the security forces. And these security forces is still the old regime, and al-Bashir regime is still active inside these military forces, and still they can do something, they can take action. So the government and transitional government should pay more attention to the reform of the security forces, and also commission especially to be designed in order to take immediate action for the cause or the Muslim brothers in this Islamic or the security institution is a must in order to secure the transition, the democratic transformation as raised by the transitional government. The military or the failed military coup represent one of the dark spots in the short history of the transitional period. We are as revolution makers, and we contribute substantially to the increasing social awareness at universities and different parts in the country. We believe very strong that the security forces should be under civil control and should also take some practical action in order to dismantle the structure of the regime, of the Al-Inqaz regime, which is still active inside the military forces. So dismantling committee should be extended in order to take action regarding this special damaging consequence. Military coup actually one of the risks with the damaging consequences on the whole revolution. So immediate actions should be taken, and also more aggressive decisions about reform should be taken. A special commission should be set, and also government should be very keen with the tribal leader or try to challenge the transitional period, like what happened in the East countries. They have to take decision about these tribal issues. Now there are also similar cases in West Kordofan and in Darfur in East. So tribalism, actually another risk that can encounter the transitional period. As I mentioned several times, there are 4 sources of risk. One of them, the military coup, and that is represent the source of corruption and dictatorship. And the second risk, the native administration. And native administration is the source of tribalism in Sudan. And you know to what extent tribalism harms the state and harm the revolution. The third issue, the religious sects. These are sources of the fundamentalism, sources of extremism. And the fourth source of risk that can encounter the transitional period, the conservative political parties in the country. So these 4 risks should be subjected to the reform. The transitional government, and especially the prime minister, should take immediate action to reform these social groups, these social institutions. They represent real and practical threat to the new Sudan, to the transformation of the new Sudan. These are the institutions of the old Sudan. So if you want to move ahead into the new Sudan, you have to reform this institution in order to be in line with the principle of December Revolution and the new Sudan as well.
Thank you. This is very, very comprehensive and very good. You're suggesting something good and new. But if we go back to Professor Manzul, Abdullah Manzul, of University of Khartoum, about now, the coup, whether it is fake, whether it is true, anyhow, it was announced that the coup attempt was aborted.
Right.
What do you expect the civilian, the civilian component of the government, what is it supposed to do? I mean by civilian, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the FFC, the Force of Freedom and Change, and the members of the Sovereignty Council, all this. Now because the civilian part now is on the defensive.
Right.
After the attempt, anyhow, he unfortunately and sadly enough, it became on the defensive. Although it succeeded in many aspects. But anyhow, about what should this
Well,
do to them to you want to be what do you think? What your advice to this group, the civilian group in the
well, I think the statement or the tweet by the Sovereignty Council member Mohammed Al-Faqih, who urged the people of the country to wake up and protect their transition. I think that was the first step that was sensible to me, and I was very surprised that the head of the Sovereign Council, General Burhan, was angry about that tweet. I couldn't understand why he was so upset, because it was only natural that the Al-Faqih asked people to protect their, because the civilian component has the support of the people.
Yeah.
They don't have guns. So it's only natural that they call upon people to protect the transition. And I think the FFC and the civilian component were very clear. They condemned the attempt, whether it is fake or true. They reiterated their commitment that this is a transitional period. It has to move us to democracy at the end of the day. The first minister or the minister of the cabinet, Khalid Omar Yusuf, was very clear in the statement that he made to Al Jazeera TV station about the fact that the civilian component is committed, that they are very clear that they don't accept any regression. And as a Sudanese citizen, I was very surprised by the statement made by the military leaders in the country. I expected at least the first thing they should do is to openly, clearly condemn the attempt, instead of trying to find a justification. I was really surprised. You are a leader. You are not only the commander-in-chief. You are the head of the Sudan Council. You are the head of the state. So you have to condemn publicly the attempt, and then you may think about why it happened or why it was attempted. So that was the thing. But to go back to your clear,
what are they expecting? Any completion of the should this event, whether it's fake or true, should it urge them to speed up,
of course,
and expedite the completion of the structure of the.
That is my position. This should be a reason for the civilian component of the government to speed up the process.
Yeah.
At least to complete the commissions. There are certain things that are quite delayed, and one of them was justice. And I was again very surprised that the leaders, when they are attacking the civilian component, they completely forgot to mention the word justice, because that's also one of the core issues that should happen in the transition. So the civilian component has the responsibility and duty to make sure that they complete the incomplete things, the commissions, justice, so that when you call upon people, they would come to your support, and they will unequivocally say that we need a transition that would take us to democracy. Now, just to get back to a question that you asked Samani on why people did not take to the streets. Well, people were ridiculing the attempted coup, because too many people are saying that this is not serious. This is just a theatrical, kind of thing. And that was why, the coup was foiled in few hours. And that's not even enough for people to organize. So the fact that people did not take it to the street.
Because they did not take it seriously.
Exactly. That's the simple fact. But again, I think the civilian component has a lot to do.
Yeah.
They have to really step up their work. And again and again, I kept saying this in this program so many times, that I don't understand the delay in completing the institution of the transition.
Yes, I just help you by saying not only the legislative council should be formed, the reform, the completion of the judicial system, the trade unions.
Exactly.
What most important is the Internal Security Act. It was prepared. Yes, can you tell us how? This is very important.
Yeah, that is also, you know, and this links us to the talk about the increased crime.
Yeah.
If-
Because of the absence of
All
the,
these are actually connected to reform of the security forces, and here I completely agree with my friend Samani that what happened is a sufficient reason for us to push that there should be a security sector reform. And one of the things that people have to understand, civilians and military, that the process of security sector reform is not something that only concerns the military.
yeah.
There must be civilian oversight of the military structure, of the security forces, and this is a practice everywhere in the world. I don't see why we should be an exception. You know?
Yeah.
So the thinking that this is a privilege of the military people to do is completely unfounded, and it's not true, it's wrong. The military will not do. And you know, now we are 2 years in the transition and nothing happened. As a matter of fact, even the process of integrating or the
DDR.
DDR is not happening. And this is something that is supposed to be done by a committee that was formed from the military.
And it's a
and
very
from those
important
who
issue.
Precisely. So this tells us very clearly that the security is a national issue, it's a civilian and military issue, it's not a privilege of some, you know, people and not the others. And I think this has to be forcefully brought up.
Very good. That's very good. Okay, Dr. Saman, this is not very clear. Okay, let us say talk about the reaction of the international community to the attempted coup. It was very prompt and it was strong at the same time. This question may be for both of you. You can later comment because this is very important. The reaction. What is your assessment on this prompt reaction and strong condemnation?
Definitely, that will bring to the mind one central fact that international community is more concerned about democracy in Sudan, about December revolution. They are very close to watch the political life in Sudan. So there is very prompt decision from the UN, from the United States of America, from Troika, from different international institutions. They condemn the failed military coup in Sudan. And this is also sent signals and attentions of the world to the type of the risk awaiting the democratic transformation in Sudan. And I think the international community from now and upward will be very keen about this institution, how they are working very hard in order to destroy the whole project of December Revolution. So they will take, I think, more aggressive actions in the future because of this failed scenario of the, so the international community respond immediately to the failed military coup. This reflects central fact that the international community has complete presence in Sudan and watching and following the democratic transformation very closely, and they also take a very strong condemning to the this military or failed military coup. So the message, I think, received by the concerned party, they have to keep away of December revolution. This is a nation revolution, cannot be controlled by a specific group of people. The armed forces and security forces are part of the nation. So how we can put the armed forces against nation? They are part of the institution, like doctors, like engineers, like university professor, like any other institution, like handicrafts. So the armed forces should work within the nation, within the will of the nation, not against the will of nations. Now the armed forces and the security forces, they have to be in line with the Sudanese nation. The Sudanese nation, they took the peaceful way to transform into a liberal democratic system in the country. They go back to the international community. Still very fanatic ideology exists inside these armed forces, and they want to go back again to the first bloc, which is impossible. By all means, the nations. We will not go back to the revolutions block, because this is point already the Sudanese has passed, and the world witnessed the ever peaceful demonstrations in the world, and one of the greatest revolutions in the world. It cannot be easily jeopardized or can be not easily damaged by this humble idea in these forces. So the international community responded immediately, and within very short course of time, they sent a condemning message to all the parties, and they also sending alarm to the armed forces and the other forces. You have to work in line, and this is what actually seen in the latest interview by the President Abdel Fattah al-Burhan in the Arabian news. He mentioned very good news in line with the transitional period and the principles of the December Revolution. My message to the all partners: we are one of the revolution makers. The message to the all parties, whether the peace partners, whether the military forces, whether any parties involved in this discourse, they have to work in line with December Revolution principles. The freedom of the people should be protected. The peace, the social justice, these values, no single institution can control. Now Sudanese people united under this slogan. And back to your questions, why they don't respond immediately and they don't go back to the street. The Sudanese people are not fully convinced with this scenario. They think that part of the games. They are not fully convinced with this military, but they have to know the message. Now the people from different parts of country, they condemn only to think about revolution. Even not if you take action, the people will unite. And again, they repeat what happened during al-Bashir regime. Every Sudani remember the very tight days of al-Bashir and how now Sudan go back to the international community. Now the economy is recovering, the political life is relaxing, no any torture, no any sort of dictatorship. People of Sudan now united under freedom and the slogans of a December Revolution. Yeah.
Sammani, okay, Professor Manzoor Abdullah, you heard what Dr. Sammani said. What is your assessment of the prompt response and strong condemnation of the international community, especially the envoy in Sudan of the UNITAMS under Chapter 6, who is representing the Security Council? And he was talking in the his capacity as representing the and his words were in Arabic and were very strong.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Sammani said, the Sudan Revolution captured the heart and minds of the whole world, and this is something that was quite unique. And it really galvanized the thinking of people. And that is why I wasn't surprised to see the very quick, very strong condemning messages from everybody, that what happened in Sudan should be guarded. What happened in Sudan is something unique. What happened in Sudan is a chance for the country to break the evil cycle of dictatorships that ruled the country for more than 50 years. And nothing happened. And it would really be surprising if we didn't receive these strong messages of condemnation. I would be very surprised. I wasn't surprised to see actually the strong messages, because this is a natural thing, It's only natural that we get this. So the message is very clear that the world will not accept any regression, that the world supports the transition, that the world would like to see Sudan as a successful case, And let us not forget the fact that Sudan is amid a very, turmoiling neighborhood.
The region, yes.
The region is quite in shambles. There are problems everywhere. There are problems in Ethiopia, and the world cannot afford to see yet another problem. So this is only natural. But again, as a Sudanese citizen, I think I wouldn't just feel happy about the messages that are coming from the international community. We have our homework to do. And that is why your question at the beginning of the episode about what should the civilian component do was quite good. We have to do our homework so that we capitalize on these strong messages of condemnation so that we perform the kind of tasks that will strengthen the transition, and that will take us to fair and well-organized elections at the end of the day.
How the messages of the international community are strong, and they are directed to the military, actually.
Sure.
That's why so the civilians who are now in the corners or on the ropes by the military, at least they have a very strong support from the United Nations and from the Troika and America itself. Even America, although America is part of the Troika, but America is sending separate individual issues from different parts, which is something that I want Dr. Samai to tell me about. This civilian component should capitalize on this support.
Yeah.
And they should. We all know that now the civilian component is in disarray, complete disarray.
Yeah.
The civilian, let us forget the military.
Yeah.
The civilian are in complete disarray, and they are different in issues, which can be resolved easily. Now, is there any reason that the Legislative Council not be formed because of this? Can you tell us in depth about this?
They have to transfer this challenge into opportunity in many ways. And I think they can gain more and invest on this challenge. The civilians components of December Revolution can advance to complete the institutions of the transitional period, especially the legislative body and the Judiciary Council, the other commissions in the transitional period, and also they can take a step forward to restructuring and establish the unified armed forces in the Sudan. And this is the most important, and I think this is a gateway to the transitional period, to start from unified armed forces, including all forces in Sudan. The peace partners, the rapid support forces, the armed forces. All Sudanese people, they united behind this slogan. They want one unified army. Why they delay? This is the questions. Any further delay will give chance to the civilian to intervene in this issue, because the nation owned the armed forces, owned the security forces. So the transitional government, unless the military leader take action in order to restructure the armed forces and to establish a new unified armed forces that align with December doctrines and values, the civilians have to take the initiative. I think this is a golden opportunity. We can transfer from challenge to the transitional period into a real opportunity to start reforming these forces, because simply they represent challenge to the whole democratic transformation in the country. So I think there are so many ways. Even the tribal leaders, like what happened in the Eastern Sudan, they have to keep away. Because now the transitional period, or especially the civilians, they can invest in this challenge, and the world will support their trends. So all parties, they have to keep away. Now in West Kordofan also they talk about Tofan, by the people defense, which is part of the collapse system of al-Bashir. All these forces are part of the al-Bashir regime. They have to keep away. December Revolution again get strength. And now they get new support from the international community. The United States made very clear and exclusive statement about the militarians who involved in this failed attempt. And they promised to take some punishment against the militarians who involved in the failed military attempt. And this is very recent decision released by the US. International community, by all means, involved in this matter. So my advice is to the civilian components, transfer challenge into opportunity. Why you are waiting? Now you have to start immediately. And people will support the initiative of the prime ministers, and the prime minister should also need a new initiative to restructure this and create the unified armed forces in the country.
That's very well, very conclusive. Okay, another issue, Professor Manzoul, Abdullah Manzoul. Professor Manzoul, you already work in this peace process why it was going on. And you were right in the middle of this process, and you were head of the Peace Institute in the University of Khartoum. So you tell us about your assessment and your expectations if what is happening in the East now. What is happening in the East by one of the big leaders of the big tribe, Bija.
Right.
Tirik is the, I don't know, but he's a leader of different tribes. As you know, the East, the Bija is a collection of tribes.
Right.
This upheaval in the East, and the refrainment of the security people to help the civilian government. Now road is being blocked for about 4 or 5 days. Airport is blocked. Things are moving very fast. Do you think that this might lead, because there are other factions not supporting this, other tribes? So what is your feeling about the upheaval in the East?
I think this is quite alarming, quite dramatic, what's happening in Eastern Sudan. And one of the key reasons for this is the Juba peace agreement. Let us be frank and honest about this. The issue of tracks.
Yeah.
Because the Eastern track has been problematic from day one. And the government or those who negotiated the Juba peace agreement knows this. And the question that I failed to get an answer for is, knowing that the Eastern track brought all these problems, why nothing is happening about it?
That time.
Exactly. Why don't you do something about it? You see? And this leads me to make the point that there is an issue, there is a problem in Eastern Sudan. And Eastern Sudan, if you compare it to other parts of the country, and if you look at the human development indices, it's one of the least developed part of the country. Let us be very frank again. The East has a problem, it's a development problem, it's well known, it's documented, and all of that. So there is an issue, there is a problem. However, the way Nasir Tirik is addressing it is wrong. You know, Tirik is not only blocking the only port in the country, he is blocking the interests of the people in Eastern Sudan. And what Tirik is doing is not sustainable. It will not continue for a long time because it will lead to civil war in Eastern Sudan.
Civil war.
Absolutely, because not everybody in Eastern Sudan agrees with what Tirik is doing. And this is the dangerous part of it. You know, Tirik is not threatening the country as such. Tirik is threatening Eastern Sudan. And I think this is a point that everybody should be careful about. It's not about not allowing people to travel to Port Sudan, or it's about the people of the East themselves.
This might ignite.
Exactly. This is going to result in civil war. If it's not carefully managed, it's going to lead to civil war. And one of the things that Tirik is doing, I have to be very clear here also as a Sudanese citizen, has to be confronted by law. You cannot block roads. You cannot cut the lifeline of the country. You have the right to ask for your things, and I acknowledge that there is a problem that needs to be addressed, but this is not the way to address it. And the law enforcement people have responsibility here to play. Now, if you follow the TV interview that was done with Tirik yesterday, he said clearly that he was protected by the military component.
Yes.
And exactly, and this is something that is quite
alarming.
This is a government that is very strange, a government that is shooting its feet, you know, and I don't think that this situation will continue. A disaster will happen quite soon if this is not addressed. And that's my take on this.
No, that's very alarming and very. I agree with you. I agree with you that things now people now are just talking about blocking this lifeline, this road. But you mentioned a very important point, because Tirik is not the only player in the East. There are other players, so this might cause or be a start of
Yeah.
civil wars in the east, and already in the neighboring countries in Ethiopia already a war is there. So this will put Sudan definitely under Chapter 7 because it will be threatening the
Yeah.
international peace and security, which is really a catastrophe to the country. Intervention, this means intervention of international forces. So you are saying that the situation in the east is not that easy. It's not only a matter. It's not all about blocking
No,
the
no, no,
road.
no, no,
It
no.
might do other problems, which this is very alarming, and we have to people to pay attention. Do you want to mention add more to this?
Yeah,
This is very serious.
Connection mentioned by Professor, and I just go on the same direction. Tariq is a not only leader in the Eastern region, and he has very long history with the collapsed regime of al-Bashir. He has demonstrated activities with proven activities during al-Inqas. He is emotionally attached to the values of the collapsed system. He is not in line with the December Revolution principles. So I think a comprehensive approach should be followed with strict. This to take dimension, one political dimensions in order to consider his applications or demands and for the social service in the area. And the second should be criminal because he blocked the lifeline of the Sudan in Africa as well. And he cannot decide it whether this line to be open or closed. It is not a matter of tribal. This is a national issue. And all Sudanese people and Africa as well, and the region as well, will be influenced by these activities. So the government should be serious more in order not to give right to other tribes to explore the same idea like what happened in Kordofan, in West Kordofan, in different parts. The second way to deal with Tariq, you have to consider his demands that he talk about the small parties in the government. Small parties that control power in the transitional period, Dr. Hamdok should pay attention to these facts. This can create congestion in the country. So he has to rely on the professional associations. And as we advised him several times, he should keep away from quotization system with the parties. Small parties control power. People will not accept these facts, because people with a large popular support will not accept, especially the tribal leaders, the political leaders, they will find against this position. Hamdok will pay the cost of the quotizations with the small parties. So attention to the government structure is important. I think my advice is he can heavily rely on the professionals, university professors, the doctors, the engineers, to keep away from the party's quotization. Party quotization will create congestions in the transitional government. So our advice is not because of the Tariq he asked for this, but he should consider the positions of these small parties, because people are going to the election and definitely they will see the contributions of these very small parties. So this is special transitional period. If you like to have support with all Sudanese people, it is better to rely on the professionals, to hire them in the cabinet, and also to give them more powers because they don't have any political backgrounds. They can give more consent to the people, and also they can control such a tribal movement like Tariq. Tariq is one of the members of the NCB, National Congress Party, for very long history. Tariq contributed substantially, and he made it very clearly that he's supported by the military component. How you say guns? This is something very amazing, actually. The military component is a part of December Revolution. They have to stop him immediately. So I think the case of the Tariq should be treated by the transitional government, and very urgent decision should be taken by the transitional government about this position, not to leave it in this position, because this will give chance to the other leaders, tribal leaders, to take the same path.
Okay, yeah. That's good. Okay, if we go back to this, to Professor Manzoor, Abdullah Manzoor, about the process as it started, as far as I know, you already said that Tariq and his group, they have a point. Sure. And they raised that point since the start of the negotiations in Juba throughout year 2020 till it culminated in October, 3rd of October, on the ratifying and signature of the with the 5 tracks. From that moment they were against it because they think that those who represented the East are not really representing it. So I mean, it started by it started by the abolition of the Eastern track. He did not talk about others. Now the government did not pay attention to what he said. He said he tried to meet with the Prime Minister. He met him, but he did not do enough to what he said. Until now, he raised the ceiling. Now the ceiling is becoming. He's talking about the civilian government, dismissal of Hamdouk. He's talking about the committee of the dismantling the regime. His ceiling is becoming very high. How can we go about it?
Well, frankly, this is nonsense to me. You know, this has nothing to do with the problem in the East or the track. Tariq can talk rightfully about the issues of Eastern Sudan, but he cannot decide about who should be the Prime Minister or about other things. This is nonsense, you know. Out of question, of course. You know, he doesn't have the right to do that. For me, the way out is to have a comprehensive conference for Eastern Sudan that brings everybody on board, including Tariq, because Tariq is only one component. He cannot speak, you know, on behalf of the whole Eastern Sudan. There should be a comprehensive conference, you know, that brings together everybody in Eastern Sudan, lay out things, including the track, and decide about the path or the way forward. But what's happening now cannot continue and unsustainable. It's going to create a disaster.
It's not. You don't think it is good fair to argue that he must go back to his ceiling, what is logical, acceptable, because we are talking about the track. I myself, I think the track, the creation of the track, the philosophy behind the 5 tracks, in itself it was not good.
That's right.
Because the conference in Juba was about those who carried arms and who threatened the security of the country. But neither the North or the Middle or the East is not involved. So why those who represented these tracks, they don't have support. They don't have popular support. Those who supported it, like so, it's only wise that people of the government should go back and to be courageous enough to abolish and to eliminate this.
To do something about it.
Yeah,
to do something about it. Even if the tracks are not abolished, the Eastern Sudan needs a comprehensive conference that brings everybody, and I don't see why this is not happening.
Me too.
You know, so this is the only way out. I understand the problem. I acknowledge that there is a problem, and I have been saying this many times. I have written articles on this. Tariq has a problem. He has some good points, but much of what he says is nonsense. I have to be very frank.
Yeah.
When it comes to the national politics,
especially what
it doesn't make sense.
It's very serious what he's saying, that he said it, I heard it. He's saying that the military component is protecting me, as if we are having 2 governments.
Yeah.
This is very serious. Can you just say?
Well, I think that talks to the crisis or the challenge that is facing the transitional government. We have seen this in the statements that followed the failed coup attempt. The civilian governments was very clear. The military component has also laid out its points of view, and we have seen that the government is not speaking with one voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now, Professor, Associate Professor Dr. Saman, we have only 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I give you 1.5 minutes and 30 minutes second for me to conclude. Can you add to what Professor Abdullah Manzul said?
Yes, I just recommend that we have to establish a commission to reform the native administration. Native administration, by the way, play a very important social group in the Sudanese society. So the government of Hamdok should create a special commission to reform the native administration to be in line with December Revolution. Still now,
all the tribal leaders are not in line with the transitional period. They working only with the military components. That is not true. They have to be in line with the December revolution. So new regulations, new legislation should be issued by the transitional period. This is one. Number two, we have to accelerate the restructuring of the security forces. And this is a must and urgent and most urgent, because this is, I think, the gateway to the democratic transformation and to avoid the activity with the damaging consequences like a military coup.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear Professor Manzoul Abdullah Manzoul, University of Khartoum, Dean Faculty of Scientific Research, and Dr. Associate Professor Sammani Hanoun, also for this 1 hour in talk about the last week upheaval or turbulence. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last hour or so. We hope to see you next week in a different issue. Till that time, say bye-bye and see you.